My name is Katie Dodd. This semester I was placed in a 5th grade classroom. I taught 2 science lessons, one over the solar system and the other over using weather instruments. Both lessons aligned with the Oklahoma Priority Academic Student Standards, or PASS standards. In this video I will be talking about how these lessons relate to the nature of science, the age appropriateness of the lessons, and how assessments were made. I will also talk about what reactions I received after the lessons had been taught, and I will reflect on how I feel the lessons went. Teaching processes is an important aspect of the nature of science. In the lesson on weather instruments, students were familiarized with different weather devices. This lesson is important because it gives students the tools they need to observe, record, and measure the weather. It is also important for students to realize that science is based on evidence, and that science content can be changed based on newfound evidence. This was highlighted in the solar system lesson in our discussion on Pluto's planetary demotion. In 5th grade, students are generally in the concrete operational stage in Piaget's stages of development. This means that they are solving problems in a more logical fashion and able to incorporate inductive reasoning or make generalizations from observations. In both the lesson on the solar system and the lesson on weather instruments, we were using concrete events and objects to which students were using logical reasoning to draw a conclusion. For the lesson on the solar system, I used a diagnostic probe prior to and after the lesson. The probe showed improvement on all areas except constellations and galaxies. If I had more time, I would have used this information to go back and cover the areas students were still struggling on. During the weather instrument lesson, I used the simple yet effective fact, thumbs up, down, and sideways, throughout the lesson to gauge where students were at on their understanding.
This is the probe that I used for the solar system lesson. Students were asked to put an X in what they thought was in the solar system and then explain their thinking.
The lessons went over well with both the students and my cooperating teacher. The solar system lesson was the highlight for the students because it was their introductory science lesson for the year, plus it was more hands-on lesson. The weather instrument lesson was not a failure, but it was not as engaging as the solar system lesson, and both my CT and I agreed that the lesson could be improved upon.
Okay, so now I want to reflect a little bit on my actual lesson plans. This is my solar system lesson. Like I said, I use the PASS standards because our school has not changed their standards yet. So I did the 5E lesson plan, the engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. For the engage, we just did kind of a question answer. I know I have the poll listed last on here, but we did the poll first. Who thinks we only have 1 star versus who thinks we have more than 1 star? And that was just to get the kids like thinking. And then one adjustment I made in the classroom after I wrote the lesson plan was to switch the explain and explore. I had a video for the explore, but I kind of felt like it gave the students all the answers. And so I wanted to do the group work first and I divided them into groups and had them find out different information about each planet. And I thought that was a lot more beneficial as an explorer than what I had originally had. So I switched those at the last minute. And so then for the explain, we watched the video. We didn't watch it all, though. We ran out of time. The elaborate was another class discussion. We talked about some things that we noticed in their group work and on the video, and if they were the same. And then I didn't have time to do the short quiz, so we didn't do that. I do want to show you, though, the results of the probe that I did. Sorry, my ink was running out on my printer. This is the results from the probe that I took prior to the lesson, and this is after. And as you can see, the after, there was a lot of improvement. The only ones that we were still lacking on were the galaxies and the star and the constellations. And like I said, if I had that to do over again, I would spend more time, obviously, on that section. Or else, if this was a lesson I was doing in my own classroom and I saw these results, I would spend another day going over those parts of the lesson. And then I have the measuring measuring the weather. I also did the 5E lesson plan here. There was a past standard, so we didn't have any of the engineering practices or anything like that. How do we measure the weather was our explorable question. And like the solar system lesson, we did a discussion-based engage where we kind of just talked about what did the students think about how the weather was measured, and we kind of talked about Oklahoma weather and how it was a fun discussion. For our Explore, we read a book, Wind and Air Pressure. We only read the sections that had to do with the tools that we were going over in the lesson. And then in the Explain, we kind of revisited our discussion and just applied what we learned in the book to the discussion. It sounds really boring, but the students really loved it. They really get into the discussions. The part where I lost them was this worksheet. We had a weather tools worksheet, and I thought this would be the fun part, but the students they did not like it. So that's where I lost a little bit of class management because of the boredom they got from this sheet. So if I was to do this lesson over again, I would nix this sheet. And in fact, I don't think the NGS standards have a weather tools standard for 5th grade anymore, so I probably just wouldn't do the lesson again. This is one part that the students really loved about the lesson, though. It was Oklahoma weather facts, and I did a fact for each of the tools that they learned about. So they really liked that. Since it was about Oklahoma, they connected to it, and they really enjoyed it. So that was my lessons. Thank you. Thanks for watching my video. Bye.